A gate agent, blinded by prejudice, looks at a 17-year-old black teen and doesn't see a first-class passenger. She sees a threat. She calls the police. What she doesn't know is that the teen on the phone with his mother has just triggered a silent alarm. That mother isn't just any mom. She's the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech firm. And with one single phone call, she's about to cancel the airline's biggest contract, unleashing a wave of karma so devastating it will bankrupt the entire company. This is the story of how a single act of hate destroyed an empire. Before we begin, comment where you are watching from today and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Now, let's get into it. The air in Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport wasn't just air. It was a pressurized substance. It was a thick soup of anxiety, stale Cinnabon, jet fuel, and the muffled roar of 10,000 conversations happening at once. 17-year-old Elijah Vance felt it pressing against his chest, making his heart beat a little faster. He was by nature a calm person. He was a 4.00 student, a chist, and the recent winner of the prestigious SNAP scholarship, which was why he was here. He was flying alone and in first class to Boston for an 8-week intensive coding and AI boot camp at MIT. He clutched the strap of his worn gray canvas backpack. It was his favorite, a gift from his cousin, and it looked starkly out of place against the navy blue blazer his mom, Serena, had insisted he wear. "Look the part, Eli," she'd said, straightening his collar via FaceTime that morning. "You earned this. Don't let anyone make you feel small." He'd rolled his eyes. "Mom, it's just a plane." "It's never just a plane, baby," she'd replied, her voice soft but firm. "You know the rules." He did. Be polite. Be invisible. Be twice as good. Don't give anyone a reason. He checked his phone. Gate B-19, flight 4481 to Boston, boarding in 15 minutes. He was early. He found the gate, a chaotic cluster of exhausted-looking people, and slid into an empty seat, pulling out his noise-canceling headphones and a book on quantum computing. He tried to focus, but the anticipation was thawing under his skin. First class. He'd never flown first class before. His mom, the founder and CEO of Vance Tech Solutions, flew it constantly, but she'd always insisted he and his sister fly coach. "Keeps you grounded," she'd say. But this trip was different. "This is a business trip for your future," she declared. "You're flying as a professional." The ticket linked to his Advantage account had appeared in his app. Vanche Elijah Kat Doya. He tried to look casual, but he felt like an imposter. He pulled the hood of his gray sweatshirt worn under the blazer for comfort over his head, sinking into his book. At the podium, gate agent Karen Miller tapped her acrylic nails on the counter. Karen was having a day. Her car had a flat tire, her shift had been extended, and the last flight to Orlando had been full of screaming children. She was 48, twice divorced, and felt the world was leaving her behind. She looked out at the sea of faces at Gate B-19 with a practiced, weary disdain. Everyone was a problem waiting to happen. Everyone wanted something. She scanned the crowd, and her eyes landed on Elijah. She saw a black teen, maybe 16 or 17, in a hoodie, slouched in a seat near the first-class boarding lane. He was in the wrong place. He was probably waiting for his family from the back of the plane. She sighed. Another one. These kids with their giant headphones acting like they own the world. She watched him for a solid 5 minutes. He didn't move, just read his book, his leg bouncing nervously. "We are now pleased to announce the pre-boarding of our flight 4481 to Boston." Karen's voice echoed, devoid of any pleasure. "We now invite our first-class passengers, as well as our active-duty military members, to board at this time. First class, please." Elijah's head snapped up. His heart did a little leap. That was him. He stood, slipped his book into his backpack, and pulled the strap over one shoulder. He took his headphones off, letting them rest around his neck. He walked a few feet to the red-carpeted lane, pulling up the digital boarding pass on his phone. He was the third person in line. The couple in front of him, a white man and woman in their 50s dripping in beige linen, were scanned through with a "Have a wonderful flight, Mr. and Mrs. Albright." Then it was Elijah's turn. He stepped forward, holding out his phone. "Good morning," he said politely. Karen Miller didn't look at his phone. She looked at him. She looked at his hoodie under the blazer, his jeans, his sneakers, and his young black face. Her lips tightened into a thin, dismissive line. "This line," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "is for first-class passengers only. The main cabin will board in about 20 minutes. Elijah blinked, confused. Yes, Mom. I'm in 2A. He held his phone out further. "My boarding pass is right here." Karen let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound like a barking dog. "No, sweetie, you're not. This is for first class. You need to go and wait with the others." She gestured vaguely at the mass of people in the general seating area. "Ma'am," Elijah said, his politeness starting to strain. He could feel the eyes of the people in the line behind him. "My name is Elijah Vance. My seat is 2A. If you just scan the pass." "I'm not scanning that," Karen snapped, her voice rising. The power of the podium was a heavy drug. She was the queen of this gate, the keeper of the sacred aluminum tube. "I know a fake pass when I see one. Now step out of the line. You're holding on my passengers." "It's not fake." Elijah's voice cracked, and he hated it. "It's my ticket. My mom bought it for me." "Oh, your mom bought it for you." Karen sneered. Of course she did. She looked past him to the man behind him. "Sir, go ahead." He was here first. The man, a businessman named Mark Jensen, said, looking uncomfortable. "He doesn't have a valid ticket," Karen said, as if it were a final judgment. "But you haven't even scanned it," Elijah protested, his voice rising in panic. "Please just scan it. It's my flight." "Sir, you are creating a disturbance," Karen said, her eyes narrowing. She loved this part, the part where she got to lay down the law. "I have asked you politely to step out of the line. If you do not, I will have to call airport security." "For what? For trying to board a flight I paid for?" Elijah was desperate. He couldn't miss this flight. The program started tomorrow. "For trying to board with a fraudulent ticket, for being disruptive." Karen picked up the phone at her desk. "This is your last chance. Move." Elijah was frozen. Humiliation and fear washed over him in a hot, prickly wave. He could see other passengers pulling out their phones, not to help, but to record. He was a spectacle. "This is ridiculous," he whispered, his hands starting to shake. "That's it," Karen said, her face lighting up with a grim sort of pleasure. She dialed a number. "Yes, I need security at Gate B19. I have a disruptive individual refusing to comply, attempting to board with a fraudulent pass." Elijah's blood ran cold. Security police. All his mom's warnings, all the talks he'd had with his dad flooded his brain. Don't resist. Be polite. Say yes, sir. Keep your hands visible. He felt a tear of pure rage and terror prick his eye. He fumbled for his phone, his thumbs slipping on the screen. He hit his mom's favorite contact. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Eli, you boarding?" Serena's voice was bright and warm. "Mom," Elijah choked out, his voice trembling. "Mom, they won't let me on the plane. The lady, she's calling the cops on me." The warmth in Serena's voice vanished, replaced by ice. "What? Elijah, what's going on? Put me on the phone with her right now." The 30 seconds between Karen's call to security and their arrival felt like an eternity. The boarding line had completely stopped. The man behind Elijah, Mark Jensen, had stepped back, his face a mask of disbelief. A young woman across the terminal was openly filming, her phone held high. "Mom, she won't talk to you," Elijah whispered into his phone, his back now pressed against a pillar. He felt like a cornered animal. "She says I'm a security risk." "A what?" Serena's voice was no longer just ice. It was a sub-zero oral weapon. "Elijah, stay calm. Do not raise your voice. Do not move suddenly. Tell me exactly what she said." "She said my ticket is fake. She said I don't belong in first class. She wouldn't even scan it." "Mom, she just looked at me." On the other end of the line, in a corner office on the 85th floor of a Chicago skyscraper, Serena Vance closed her eyes. Her knuckles holding her own phone were white. She was in the middle of a final review for a $500 million acquisition. Her entire executive board was waiting in the conference room. She stood up, walked to her assistant's desk, and made a cancel gesture. Her assistant, stunned, immediately began clearing her schedule. Serena walked back in her office and locked the door. "Okay, baby," Serena said, her voice terrifyingly calm. "This is what we're going to do. You're going to stay on the line with me. Do not hang up. When the officer arrives, you will be polite. You will use sir and ma'am, and you will explain that your mother, Serena Vance, purchased your ticket." "They're here," Elijah whispered. Two Atlanta airport police officers approached. One was older with a weary seen-it-all face. His name tag read Doyle. The other was younger, posture stiff, hand resting near his sidearm. Karen Miller sprang to life, her voice taking on a shrill, victimized tone. "Officer Doyle, thank goodness this young man, this individual tried to force his way onto the plane." "Force his way?" Elijah thought, his mind reeling. "I was just standing here. He's using a fraudulent first-class ticket," Karen continued, gesturing to Elijah as if he were a piece of garbage. "And when I confronted him, he became belligerent and aggressive. He was frightening the other passengers. I had to deny him boarding for the safety of everyone." Officer Doyle looked at Karen, then at Elijah. He saw a scared kid, clutching a cell phone, wearing a backpack that probably weighed more than he did. He looked nothing like the aggressive individual Karen was describing. Doyle had dealt with Karen Miller before. She was a known quantity, a walking complaint generator. "Son, what's your name?" Doyle asked, his voice neutral. "Elijah Vance, sir," Elijah said, his voice shaking but clear, just as his mother had coached him. "This is my flight. My seat is 2A. That's my mom on the phone. The gate agent won't scan my ticket." "He's lying, officer," Karen shrieked. "He probably stole it. Or it's a fake. Look at him. He doesn't belong here. He's probably one of those kids who tries to sneak into the cargo hold." The insult was so absurd, so laced with venom, that it momentarily stunned Elijah into silence. "Ma'am," Officer Doyle said, a sliver of annoyance in his voice, "I need you to calm down. Let's just verify the facts." He turned to Elijah. "Son, do you have identification?" "Yes, sir." Elijah carefully slid his backpack off one shoulder. "My wallet is in the front pocket. May I reach in and get it?" "Go ahead," Doyle said. Elijah's hands were trembling so badly he fumbled with the zipper. He pulled out his wallet and produced his driver's license. Doyle took it. He looked at the license. "Vance Elijah K." He looked at the boarding pass on Elijah's phone screen. "Vance Elijah K, seat 2A. "Well, ma'am," Doyle said, handing the ID back to Elijah. "The name on the ID matches the name on the ticket. Looks legitimate to me." Karen's face purpled. She was being questioned. She was being undermined. "That ID is probably fake, too. They can make those on the internet. You know, he's not getting on this plane. I am the final authority at this gate, and I'm denying him boarding. He's a security risk." This was the trigger. This was the moment the world shifted. On the phone, Serena Vance had heard every word. Fake ID. Stole it. Security risk. "Elijah." Serena's voice came through the phone, sharp and clear. "Put me on speaker right now. Hold the phone up so the officer can hear me." Elijah did, his finger tapping the speaker icon. "Officer Doyle." Serena's voice cut through the terminal noise. It was a voice accustomed to commanding boardrooms. A voice that did not tolerate fools. "My name is Serena Vance. I'm Elijah Vance's mother. I'm also the CEO of Vance Tech Solutions. I am on a recorded line with my corporate counsel. I need to know why my son is being detained." Doyle's eyebrows shot up. "Ma'am, he's not being detained. You were just," Serena interrupted, "standing by while an employee of Globalist Air, your gate agent, Karen Miller, accuses my minor son of fraud, theft, and being a security risk. All it seems, because he is a black teenager flying in a premium cabin, a cabin, I might add, that I paid for with my corporate card. The same corporate card that pays for over $300 million in travel with this airline every year." The color drained from Karen Miller's face. $300 million. She suddenly felt a cold sweat on her neck. Doyle, for his part, wanted this to be over. "Ma'am, I assure you." "No, officer, let me assure you." Serena said, "This situation will be resolved in one of two ways. Either your gate agent scans my son's valid ticket and allows him to board his flight with a full apology, or in approximately 30 seconds, I will make a call that will ground every Globalist Air flight currently using Vance reservation and logistics software that is roughly all of them. Please advise your employee. The clock is ticking." Karen Miller stared at the phone in Elijah's hand, as if it were a bomb. The other passengers were muttering. The man, Mark Jensen, spoke up. "This is outrageous. The kid's mom is on the phone. Just scan the damn ticket, lady." "Officer," Serena's voice prompted. Doyle looked at Karen. His face was granite. "Scan the ticket, Miss Miller. Now." Karen's hands were shaking now, but not with power, with fear. She snatched Elijah's phone. Her thumb fumbled as she tried to angle it onto the scanner. Beep. The light on her monitor flashed green. "Vance. Elijah K. Seat 2A. Zone 1. Valid." The silence that followed was deafening. Karen stared at the green valid message, her world collapsing. Officer Doyle just shook his head. "Have a good flight, son," he said to Elijah, pointedly, ignoring Karen. "Sorry for the trouble." "Thank you, officer," Elijah mumbled, taking his phone back. He looked at Karen. Her face was a model mask of white and red. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "Mom," Elijah whispered into the phone. It's okay now. It's scanned." "No, Elijah." Serena's voice was still cold steel. "It is not okay, but you're going to get on that plane. You're going to sit in seat 2A. You're going to fly to Boston. And you are going to be brilliant. I will handle this. I love you. I love you too, Mom." He disconnected the call. He turned, his shoulders slumped, and walked down the jet bridge. The flight attendant at the door, a kind-faced woman named Chloe, saw his tear-streaked face and the red-faced gate agent glaring at his back. "Welcome aboard," Chloe said gently, pointedly making eye contact. "Can I show you to your seat, sir?" Elijah just nodded, the humiliation still burning. As he turned the corner into the first-class cabin, he had no idea that his mother, 800 m away, was already pulling the pin on a grenade that would incinerate the entire airline. Richard Sterling, CEO of Globalist Air, was on the 14th hole of the Augusta National Golf Club. It was a perfect, cloudless Georgia day. He had just sunk a 20-foot putt for birdie, and his foursome, which included a U.S. senator and the COO of a major oil company, was suitably impressed. "That's how it's done, gentlemen," Richard beamed, accepting their back slaps. His caddy, a young man named Ben, winced as he approached. "Mr. Sterling, sir, your assistant, Angela, is on the line. She says it's code red." Richard's good mood evaporated. Code red was a term he'd invented. It meant the company was actively on fire. "For God's sake," he muttered. He took the phone. "Angela, this had better be a plane falling out of the sky." "It's worse, sir." Angela's voice was tight with panic. "Serena Vance is on the line. She's demanding to speak to you. She said if you don't pick up, she's calling the Wall Street Journal." Richard Sterling went cold. Serena Vance, CEO of Vance. Vance wasn't just a client. They were the client. They weren't just a partner. They were the digital spine of Globalist Air. Vance's Odyssey platform handled everything. Their ticketing, reservations, logistics, crew scheduling, and most critically, their brand new multi-billion-dollar cybersecurity infrastructure. The contract with Vance Tech was the largest in the airline's history, valued at over $2 billion over 5 years. "Put her through," he barked, waving his foursome on. "I'll catch up." He sat in the golf cart, the chirping of birds suddenly mocking him. "Richard," Serena's voice said. There were no pleasantries. "Serena, what a surprise," he said, forcing a chuckle. "To what do I owe the pleasure? I hope you're calling to tell me the Q3 platform migration is ahead of schedule. I'm pulling the contract." Richard Sterling's blood stopped moving. He thought he'd misheard. "What? You're breaking up, Serena. It sounded like you said you were pulling the contract. That's a good one." "I'm not joking, Richard." Serena said her voice was flat, dead, and utterly final. As of 10:05 a.m. Eastern Time, Vance is invoking Article 12, Section 4 of our partnership agreement, the reputational damage and gross breach of ethics clause. "We are terminating our relationship with Globalist Air." Effective immediately, Richard literally dropped his phone. He fumbled, grabbing it before it hit the grass. "Serena, what the hell are you talking about? Article 12. That's for a catastrophic failure, a data breach, a criminal indictment." "What happened? What happened?" Serena said, her voice now rising with a controlled, white-hot fury. "Is that at 9:15 a.m. at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta, Gate B19, your employee, Gate Agent Karen Miller, racially profiled my 17-year-old son, Elijah Vance. She what? Richard was lost. A gate agent? You're pulling a $2 billion deal over a gate agent? I am pulling a $2 billion deal because your employee accused my son, a minor, of using a fraudulent ticket. She refused to scan his valid pass. She humiliated him in front of 100 people. And then she called the police on him. She told the officers he was a security risk and that he didn't belong in first class. Richard stood up, his knees weak. Oh God. Serena, I had no idea. This is horrific. It's unacceptable. I'll fire her right now. I'll have her fired before your son even lands in Boston. I'll give him 1,000,000 frequent flyer miles. I'll apologize personally. Do you think this is about miles, Richard? Serena's voice was laced with contempt. Do you think this is about one bad employee? This is about a culture. A culture you run. A culture that empowers a woman like Karen Miller to look at a black child and see a criminal. A culture that allows her to feel so secure in her prejudice that she can call the police on him, risking his life without a second thought. Serena, I swear to you that is not our culture. We have diversity training. We have inclusion seminars. Your seminars are failing. Serena shouted, her composure finally cracking for a second. My son, my child, he was flying to an MIT program. He's a good kid. He's a brilliant kid. And your company treated him like he was cargo, like he was nothing. What if that officer hadn't been reasonable? What if Elijah had been frightened and had run? What if? Do you understand the line your employee crossed? Do, Serena. I do. Please don't do this. Richard was begging now. The golf game, the senator, his entire world had shrunk to this one horrifying conversation. This will destroy us, Serena. You know it will. The Odyssey platform is 90% migrated. If you pull your teams now, we can't operate. We will be grounded. This is a death sentence. You're describing my problem, not yours, Serena said, the ice returning. My problem is that I cannot, in good conscience, allow my company's name and technology to be the foundation for an airline that criminalizes my son. What about my engineers, Richard? My team, the ones who fly all over the country to keep your planes in the air. Many of them look just like my son. Are they to be arrested at the gate? No, we're done. Serena, please. There has to be something. A fine. A donation. Name your price. A $100 million donation to the United Negro College Fund right now. I'll do it. The price, Serena Vance said, is your company. You should have thought of that before you let your culture rot. Vance will honor the 90-day transition period as stipulated in Article 12 to allow you to migrate to a new provider. But as of today, all new work, all upgrades, and all support for the new platform are halted. Our legal team is sending the formal notice to your general counsel as we speak. Goodbye, Richard. Serena, don't. The line went dead. Richard Sterling stood on the 14th hole, his $5,000 driver in his hand, and stared at his phone. The birds were still chirping. It was a perfect day, and he knew with a certainty that chilled him to his bone that he had just presided over the end of globalist air. He started to run, screaming for his caddy. Get the jet. Get the jet fueled. Get me to Atlanta. Get Harrison on the phone. Find me a gate agent named Karen Miller. Elijah stumbled down the jet bridge, his face burning. He felt like every person in the tunnel was staring at him, whispering, "There's the kid who caused all the trouble. There's the one the cops were called on." When he stepped onto the aircraft, the flight attendant, Chloe, gave him a warm, pitying smile. "Right this way, sir. Seat 2A on your right." He nodded, unable to speak. He found his seat. It was a luxurious pod, all cream-colored leather and dark wood trim. In any other circumstance, he would have been giddy with excitement. He would have taken pictures, texted his sister, explored all the buttons. Instead, he collapsed into it, fumbling with the seatbelt. He felt dirty, violated. The man who had been behind him in line, Mark Jensen, passed him and paused at his seat in row 3. "Hey, kid," he said, his voice low. "You okay? What that woman did, that was the most disgusting thing I've seen in 20 years of flying." Elijah looked up, surprised. "I'm fine, thank you, sir." "You handled it well," Mark said, giving him a respectful nod. Your mother sounds like one hell of a woman. He then sat down. A few minutes later, the first-class cabin was full. Elijah stared determinedly out the window, watching the baggage carts buzz around. He just wanted the door to close. He wanted the plane to move. He wanted to be out of Atlanta. Then he heard her voice. All right, Chloe. All manifests are updated. We are clear to close, Karen Miller said, stepping into the galley at the front of the plane. She was handing a stack of papers to the flight attendant. Elijah's entire body went rigid. He shrank down in his seat, hoping she wouldn't see him, but she did. Karen's eyes, still red-rimmed with fury and a new dawning terror, scanned the cabin and locked directly onto him. She wasn't just angry anymore. She looked hateful. She felt him. This boy had ruined her day, had embarrassed her in front of security, had gotten her yelled at by that voice on the phone. She took 3 steps into the cabin, standing over his seat. You? She hissed, her voice low enough that only he and the passenger in 1A could hear. You think you're smart, don't you? Running to your mommy. Elijah pressed himself against the window. He couldn't breathe. I don't want any trouble, ma'am. Oh, you don't want any trouble, she mocked, her face contorting. You've already caused the trouble. You and your kind, always looking for a handout, always pulling the race card. Ma'am, please, Elijah begged, his voice a whisper. Just leave me alone. I'm not done with you, Karen sneered. She looked at his backpack, which he'd placed carefully under the seat in front of him. That bag is too large for a personal item in first class. It needs to be stowed overhead. It's just my backpack. It fits, Elijah said, his voice trembling. I am the lead gate agent, and I am telling you it is a compliance violation. It goes up, but my laptop is in there and my book. I don't care what's in there. Put up now. This was her last pathetic shred of power, and she was going to wield it like a club. But ma'am, do you want me to call Officer Doyle back? Do you want to be removed from this flight? Because I will do it. I'll say you're non-compliant. Chloe, the flight attendant, hurried over from the galley. Karen, what's going on? The door needs to close. This passenger is non-compliant. Karen snapped. He's refusing to stow his bag. Chloe looked at the small canvas backpack. Karen, that bag is perfectly fine. It fits under the seat. It's not a problem. It is a problem, Karen insisted, her eyes locked on Elijah. He does what I say, or he doesn't fly. Elijah, his hands shaking so hard he could barely move, unbuckled his seatbelt. He couldn't fight anymore. He just wanted it to be over. He bent down, pulled the backpack out, and stood up to heft it into the overhead bin. As he did, the unzipped front pocket gaped open. His cello rosin, his spare strings, and worst of all, his $500 digital audio recorder, a gift from his dad for practicing his music, clattered out onto the floor, rolling into the aisle. Oh my God, Elijah gasped, dropping to his knees to grab the sensitive recorder. Karen Miller laughed. A real actual laugh. Clumsy too, she sneered. That was the breaking point. Not for Elijah, but for the other passengers. For God's sake, you horrible woman, shouted a woman from 4D. Leave that boy alone. Mark Jensen was already on his feet. That's it. Flight attendant. What's this woman's name? I'm filing a formal complaint. This is harassment. We all saw it. Karen froze, realizing she had gone too far. The entire cabin was staring at her with open hostility. Chloe stepped in, her face firm. Karen, get off my plane now. You're not flight crew. You are interfering with cabin safety. Get off. Karen, defeated and humiliated, shot one last look of pure poison at Elijah, then turned and stomped off the jet bridge. Chloe immediately knelt. Are you all right? Is this broken? She asked, helping Elijah gather his things. I think so, Elijah stammered, his face hot with tears he refused to let fall. I am so sorry, Chloe said, her voice full of genuine empathy. She helped him put his bag in the bin, then returned to her jump seat. The main door sealed with a heavy final thunk. As the plane began its pushback, Elijah Vance finally let out the breath he felt he'd been holding for an hour. He was safe. He was away from her. He didn't know that at that exact moment, 2,000 feet above the Augusta golf course, Richard Sterling was on a satellite phone screaming at the Atlanta station manager. I don't care what the union says. I don't care if she's your sister. You find Karen Miller, you take her badge, and you walk her out of my airport. If she is still employed by the time I land, I will fire you. The entire company is at stake. Mr. Harrison, the Atlanta station manager for Globalist Air, was a man who prided himself on unflappability. He'd handled bomb threats, fuel shortages, and a full-blown nor'easter. But the call he'd just received from Richard Sterling was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. The CO hadn't just been angry, he'd been terrified. "Walk her out," Harrison muttered, hanging up the phone. The entire company. He pulled up the employee roster for Gate B-19. Miller Karen, 22 years of service, a union rep's nightmare. He didn't care. He called airport security. Not Doyle, but the internal removal team. "I need an escort at the B-19 break room. We have a termination." Karen Miller was in that break room, furiously stirring a packet of artificial sweetener into a cup of lukewarm coffee. She was venting to her colleague Janice. And then the kid's mom gets on the phone. "A CEO?" she says. "Can you believe the nerve? CEO of Vance Tech? Like I'm supposed to know what that is. Probably runs some stupid website." And then the cop, he sided with the kid. "It's this whole world, Janice. It's upside down." There they coddle them. And then that flight attendant, Chloe, kicked me off the plane. "I'm riding her up. I'm riding them all up." Janice nodded sympathetically, though she was mostly just waiting for Karen to stop talking, so she could start her own lunch. The break room door opened. Mr. Harrison stood there, flanked by two stone-faced security guards. "Karen," Harrison said. His voice was flat. "Mr. Harrison," Karen said, surprised. "Good. I need to file a complaint against Save It, Karen." Harrison cut her off. "Gather your personal belongings from your locker. You're terminated." The coffee cup stopped halfway to Karen's mouth. "What?" She laughed. That's not funny, Mr. Harrison. This is not a joke. Your employment with Globalist Air is terminated. Effective immediately. These gentlemen will escort you to your locker, and then they will escort you off the property. You can't do this." Karen shrieked, her voice echoing in the small room. "I'm in the union. You have to have a hearing. You have to have cause. Is it because of that boy? That lying kid?" "It is," Harrison said, his face grim. "That lying kid was Elijah Vance. And his mother, Serena Vance, the CEO of Vance, just pulled our entire IT, logistics, and cybersecurity contract." Janice, who actually paid attention to company memos, gasped. "Vance?" "As in the Odyssey Project Vance Tech." The very same Harrison said the $2 billion deal. She pulled it because you couldn't just scan a valid ticket, because you had to call a cop on a 17-year-old child. The reality of the situation hit Karen like a physical blow. This wasn't a write-up. This wasn't a suspension. This was the end. $2 billion. Her mind couldn't even comprehend the number. She had just in her fit of prejudice single-handedly sunk a battleship. "No," she whispered, collapsing into a chair. "No, I didn't know. How could I know who he was?" "That's the point, Karen." Harrison finally snapped, his own unflappability gone. "You're not supposed to know. Your job is to scan the ticket in their hand, not to judge the color of their skin. You're not paid to know if they belong. You're paid to check them in. And you failed miserably." He nodded to the guards. "Get her." "No, please." Karen started to sob, a desperate, ugly sound. "I have a mortgage. I have 22 years. You can't just." The guards lifted her by her elbows. She didn't fight. She just went limp. They walked her out of the break room, past the crowded Beconkenors gates. Dozens of her colleagues, her friends, watched in stunned silence as Karen Miller, the self-proclaimed queen of Gate B-19, was hauled out like a common criminal, crying and babbling about a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, the news was already leaking. Serena Vance's legal notice had been carbon copied to Globalist Air's entire board of directors. One of them, panicking about his stock options, leaked it to a friend at Bloomberg. At 11:30 a.m., the first headline hit the wire. Rumor: Vance cites solutions to terminate $2 billion Odyssey partnership with Globalist Air. Cause cited as ethics breach. The market, which had been humming along, stopped. Traders stared at their terminals. A rumor this specific was almost always true. Globalist Air stock, ticker GBA, was trading at $45.50. At 11:31 a.m., the stock halted. At 11:32 a.m., It resumed trading at $38. At 11:35 a.m., it was at $31.20. In less than 5 minutes, over 30% of Globalist Air's market cap, billions of dollars, had been wiped out. By the time Richard Sterling's private jet touched down in Atlanta, his phone was vibrating so hard it was melting. Every investor, every board member, every news outlet in the country was calling him. He staggered off the plane into a private terminal where a frantic-looking Mr. Harrison was waiting. "She's gone, sir," Harrison said, breathless, fired and removed from the property. "Too late," Richard whispered, staring at the Bloomberg ticker on the terminal TV. GBA was now at $29. "It's too late. It's already out." "Sir," Harrison said, "the board has called an emergency meeting, 3:00 p.m. in the main conference room. They want your resignation." Richard Sterling looked at Harrison, his face a mask of abject defeat. "A 40-year-old airline," he said, his voice hollow, "destroyed by one woman on one shift in one moment of stupid, pointless hate." He straightened his tie, though his hands were shaking. "Give me a coffee, Harrison. A large black coffee. And then get my personal assistant. Tell her to start packing my office." The emergency board meeting at Globalist Air headquarters was not a meeting. It was an execution. Richard Sterling, his face ashen, walked in and was met by 12 faces of stone-cold fury. "Richard," said the lead director, a man named Thomas Bainbridge, "you have one chance. Tell us you fixed this. Tell us Serena Vance has reconsidered." I can't," Richard stammered. I begged. I offered to fire the employee. I offered a $100 million donation." "A donation?" Another director scoffed. "You think you can buy your way out of this?" "Her son." She called the cops on her son. "The videos are already online, Richard," a third director yelled, slamming her iPad on the table. "A passenger, Mark Jensen, has been live tweeting the whole thing." He described the initial confrontation. He described her harassing the boy on the plane. "It's everywhere. Globalist air and racism are the #1 trending topics on Earth." Richard sank into his chair. He hadn't even known about the harassment on the plane. It was a bottomless pit of disaster. "The 90-day transition clause," Thomas Bainbridge said, his voice low and dangerous. "Can we survive it?" The chief technology officer, a man who hadn't slept in 24 hours, spoke up. "No, not a chance. The Odyssey platform isn't just software. It's the brain. Vance's people are woven into every part of our operation. Their proprietary code is the only thing keeping our 8,000 daily flights from crashing into each other. If their core support and development teams walk out, we can't migrate to a new system in 90 days. We couldn't do it in 90 weeks. We'll have to revert to the old 80s era system. It can't handle the load. We'll have to ground 60% of our fleet." Silence. The kind of silence that precedes a death rattle. "It's bankruptcy," Thomas said, stating the obvious. Chapter 11, maybe 7. He looked at Richard Sterling. "Your resignation is accepted, Richard. Effective immediately." Richard nodded, stood up, and walked out of the boardroom of the company he had run for a decade. He was a ghost. The next 90 days were a public slow-motion train wreck. Globalist Air desperate sued Vance to try and force them to stay. The judge threw the case out in a single day, citing the crystal-clear breach of ethics clause that Serena Vance's own legal team had written into the contract 3 years prior. Serena Vance, meanwhile, was praised as a hero. Forbes ran a cover story, "The Vance Doctrine, the CEO who put her son before her stock price and won." Vance stock rose 15%. She was inundated with partnership offers. She ended up signing a new, even larger contract with Ascent Airlines, Globalist's main rival, after a public 2-week audit of their diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. For Karen Miller, the karma was swift and brutal. The video of her being walked out crying went viral. Her name, her face, her address, it was all leaked. She became the face of Airport Karen. She received thousands of threats. She had to sell her house and move to a different state. She applied for jobs at other airlines, at rental car counters, even in a fast food restaurant. The moment they Googled her name, the interview was over. "We can't have you," one manager told her. "You're a walking PR disaster." She lost her pension, her flight benefits, her entire career, all for a moment of power. The 90-day transition period ended on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, the globalist air system crashed. It wasn't a small crash. It was a total catastrophic meltdown. Reservation systems went dark. Crew scheduling vanished. At O'Hare, a globalist 777's refueling computer simply stopped working. In Dallas, the baggage system lost 4,000 bags in an hour. By Wednesday at noon, the entire globalist air fleet was grounded worldwide. Tens of thousands of passengers were stranded. The stock, which had been bleeding out at $12, flatlined. It was worthless. By Friday, Globalist Air, a 40-year-old icon of American aviation, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It would never fly again. Tens of thousands of people, pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, and gate agents who had just scanned the tickets were out of a job. All because one woman on one bad day decided a black kid in a hoodie didn't belong. Elijah Vance stepped off the jet bridge at Boston's Logan International Airport into a world that felt alien. The air was cooler, the light was a different color, and the ambient noise of the terminal was a sharp, clear New England hum compared to the humid Atlanta draw. But he felt none of it. He was a raw, exposed nerve. Every uniformed employee he saw, a Massport official, a TSA agent, even a janitor, caused his heart to seize, his hands to clench. He walked with his head down, his backpack clutched in one hand, feeling like a target. He felt like the security risk Karen Miller had branded him. The brand felt physical, as if she had seared the words onto his forehead for everyone to see. He just wanted to get to the car, to the dorm, to a locked room where he could finally breathe. He scanned the crowd of drivers in the arrivals hall, looking for a sign with his name. Instead, he saw his mother. Mom. His voice cracked. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be in Chicago running her empire, but there she was standing by a pillar, her briefcase at her feet. She wasn't Serena Vance, CEO. Her sharp blazer was gone, replaced by a simple knit sweater. Her face, usually a mask of calm, professional focus, was stripped bare. She was just Mom. He broke into a run. He didn't care about the people he jostled, the bags he bumped. He ran the last 50 feet and crashed into her. Serena Vance dropped her purse and caught her son in a hug so fierce it nearly cracked his ribs. She held the back of his head, her eyes squeezed shut, her own body trembling with a mixture of rage and profound relief. She didn't say, "How was the flight?" or "Welcome to Boston." She just whispered, "You're safe. I've got you. You're safe now." And that was what finally broke him. The tears he had refused to let Karen see. The terror he had swallowed in front of Officer Doyle. The humiliation he had choked down as he picked his belongings off the first-class floor. It all came roaring up his throat in a single ragged sob. He buried his face in her shoulder. A 17-year-old boy who just 2 hours ago had felt the entire world trying to crush him. She stammered, unable to form a sentence. "I know." Serena's voice was a low growl, her hand stroking his hair. "I know. I've been on the phone with legal for 2 hours. I took the jet. I beat your flight here. I was not letting you be alone for one more second on this soil." She held him at arm's length, her hands on his shoulders, her eyes scanning him, not for emotional trauma, but for physical wounds. It was a primal motherly inventory. "Did they touch you? Did the officer put his hands on you?" "No," Elijah whispered, wiping his face. He was okay. He actually helped. He made her scan the ticket. "Good," Serena said, her CEO face clicking back into place for a moment. One data point of sanity. She picked up her bag and "Come on, the car is waiting. Tell me everything. Not the parts one heard. Everything from the second you walked up to that gate." They slid into the back of a black Mercedes S-Class. The plush leather and silent, insulated cabin felt like a sensory deprivation tank after the chaos of the airport. Elijah stared out the window as the Boston skyline slid by. "Mom," he started, his voice hollow. It was worse after you hung up." Serena turned her full attention to him. "What do you mean worse?" She came onto the plane after the police left. After she scanned the ticket and it was green, she followed me onto the jet bridge and into the cabin. The temperature in the car dropped 20 degrees. Serena's hands, which had been resting on her lap, slowly, deliberately clenched into fists. She came to my seat. Elijah continued, the memory replaying in his mind, his voice shaking again. She stood over me. She hissed at me. She called me a my kind and said I was just pulling the race card. Serena Vance did not speak. She simply stared at the headrest in front of her, her jaw working. She said my backpack was a violation. Elijah whispered, the shame of it washing over him again. She made me stand up and put in the overhead just to make me and my stuff fell out. My recorder, my rosin all over the floor. And Mom, he choked on the word. She laughed. She laughed at me. That was the word that sealed the airline's fate. Laughed. The pull of a $2 billion contract was a business decision. The humiliation of her son was a personal grievance. But the laugh, that was a declaration of war. That was an act of such profound, dehumanizing cruelty that it transcended business and became a moral imperative. She laughed. Serena repeated. The words were not a question. They were a verdict. She laughed as my son knelt on the floor. She took out her phone. Her thumb moved with a speed that was terrifying to behold. She sent a text to her chief counsel. Find the entire crew manifest for Globalist 4481. I want the name of the lead flight attendant, a woman named Chloe. And I want the name of the man in seat 3C, Mark Jensen. I have bonuses to pay. Her second text was to her head of PR. The ethics breach is now a pattern of malicious harassment and racial bias, starting with Gate Agent Karen Miller and indicative of a corporate culture of systemic rot. Update the press release. Mom, what are you doing? Elijah asked, watching her. I'm handling it, Serena said, her voice now flat and cold. What that woman did at the gate was an act of ignorance. What she did on that plane was an act of malice. The first one cost her a job. The second one is going to cost them everything. They empowered her. They created a world where she could do that and feel safe. I'm going to uncreate it. There was a flight attendant. Elijah said, remembering Chloe? She stood up to Karen. She kicked her off the plane. A flicker of something human returned to Serena's face. I know. I'm finding her. People like Karen Miller get fired. People like Chloe get hired. The next few months were a blur for Elijah. He'd buried himself in the MIT program. While the coding and AI lectures were complex, they were logical. They were fair. A line of code either worked or it didn't. There was no prejudice in a Python script. It was a refuge. He worked 18-hour days driven by a new frantic energy. He was trying to outrun the memory of that day, to build a new version of himself that was so smart, so successful, so bulletproof that no one could ever make him feel that small again. Meanwhile, the world he had left behind was imploding. Globalist Air stocks ceased to exist. Their bankruptcy filing was the largest in aviation history. The videos of Karen, the tweets from Mark Jensen, and Serena's own scathing public statements had destroyed them. Karen Miller vanished after being doxxed. She sold her condo at a massive loss and fled. She was last seen applying for a job at a truck stop diner in Nebraska, but was recognized and asked to leave. She had become a pariah, a ghost, the face of a hate that society had finally publicly decided to reject. Richard Sterling, the CEO, was forced to sell his Augusta membership and his fleet of cars to pay his legal bills. He was a case study in business schools now. The cost of a rotten culture. But Serena Vance wasn't just focused on destruction. She was building. 1 month after the incident, Chloe, the flight attendant, was at home in Atlanta sorting through job postings. She was out of job thanks to the bankruptcy and feared she'd be blacklisted. She received a call from a Chicago number. Miss Chloe Reynolds, this is Serena Vance. Chloe nearly dropped the phone. Ma'am, I'm so sorry for what happened. You, Serena said, have nothing to apologize for. You were the only person in a globalist uniform that day who did their job with integrity and compassion. I'm calling to offer you one. A week later, Chloe was in Chicago accepting a position as the new director of in-flight customer experience for Ascent Airlines, the chief rival to globalists. Her new salary was triple what she had made before. Her first mandate from Serena: design a customer service training program that starts with the assumption that every passenger deserves to be treated with dignity. Build a culture that puts Karen Miller out of business for good. Serena also made a call to Atlanta. Officer Doyle, nearing retirement, picked up his desk phone. Officer Doyle, Serena Vance. I never got to thank you. No thanks needed, ma'am. Doyle grunted. Just did my job. I'm sorry it went as far as it did. I've seen that Agent Miller on her high horse before. Glad someone finally knocked her off it. How would you like a new job? Serena asked. One where you're not just doing your job, but defining what that job should be. A year later, Elijah was a freshman at Stanford. The summer at MIT had solidified his path. He was a rising star in the CS department. He was having dinner with his mother at a restaurant in Palo Alto. He was, as usual, in a Stanford hoodie and jeans. He saw a man at a nearby table glance at him, then at the expensive wine on their table and sneer. It was a tiny microaggression, the kind he used to ignore, but he couldn't ignore it anymore. He tensed. Serena saw it. He's just an ignorant man in a bad suit, Eli. He has no power here. That's what I've been thinking about, Elijah said, pushing his food around. All year, he has no power. But she did. And the only reason I'm here, the only reason my life wasn't derailed is you. Because you're Serena Vance, CEO of Vance, because you had a $2 billion contract to pull. He looked her in the eyes, his voice dropping. But what if you weren't? What if you were a teacher or a nurse or a single mom working 2 jobs? What would have happened to me, Mom? If you were just Mom? Serena put her fork down. The question hung in the air, terrible and true. I'd be in jail. Elijah answered his own question. Or worse, that scholarship would be gone. Stanford would be a joke. My life, our life would be over. All because of one hateful, scared woman at a podium. I think about it every single day, Serena whispered. I think about the privilege we have. It's an armor. And that day I was just so angry that you needed it. So, let's give it to them, Elijah said, a new fire in his eyes. Give what? To who? The armor, Elijah said, leaning forward. That $100 million you offered Sterling as a donation. Is that real? Is it just sitting there? A slow smile spread across Serena's face. It's in a sub-account. I call it the rainy day fund. Well, it's raining, Mom, Elijah said. It's pouring on kids just like me who don't have a CEO for a mother. Let's build them an umbrella. Elijah, the coder, grabbed a napkin and pulled a pen from his backpack. It's not just about money, Mom. It's about power. It's about response. What if I built an app? A simple app. You're a kid. You're being harassed at the gate. You press one button. He drew a circle on the napkin. The Vance forward button. The second you press it, 3 things happen. 1, it instantly starts recording audio and high-definition video, and it streams it off the device to a secure server so they can't delete it. 2, it instantly pings your location and sends your profile, your name, your flight, your ticket to a 24-hour legal hotline. 3, a lawyer calls you back right then and asks to be put on speakerphone with the agent. Serena's eyes lit up. She was seeing it. A legal hotline, she said, picking up the thread, staffed by the best civil rights attorneys in the country. And who we get to run the rapid response team? A man of unimpeachable character. Someone who knows the airport system from the inside. She was already dialing her phone. Doyle. And the other part, Elijah said, the part that stops it before it starts. The grants. We'll fund them. We'll partner with academic programs, and we'll buy the tickets. Thousands of them. All first class. We'll put so many brilliant black and brown kids in seat 2A that a Karen won't even blink. It would just be normal. Serena looked at her son. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't the boy who cried in her arms at Logan. He was a builder. He was her son. Vance Forward, she said, testing the name. I love it. Let's go to work. The launch of the Vance Forward Foundation was the biggest philanthropic event of the year. It was held poignantly in the soaring atrium of the TWWA Hotel at JFK Airport. The press was there in force, and just like that, one phone call set in motion a chain of events that proved the ultimate rule of karma. What goes around comes around. Karen Miller, who tried to make a young man small, ended up with nothing. Richard Sterling, the CEO who presided over a rotten culture, lost his entire company. And Serena Vance, a mother who would move heaven and earth for her child, not only protected her son, but changed the entire industry. The world is full of Karens, but it's also full of Serenas. This story is a reminder that the most powerful contracts we have aren't with corporations. They're with each other. What did you think of this story? What would you have done in Serena's position? Let me know in the comments below. If you love stories where hard karma delivers the perfect justice, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. We have new dramatic stories coming for you every single week.